I feel so forlorn.
I know. Pelham's gone. Pelham left us. We are live.
I like how you're going to just spring that on me.
Yes.
It's a good thing I wasn't looking in the camera, adjusting my hair, cleaning my teeth.
Yes. It's all before. Yeah, Pelham sprung that on me last week, which was the casual conversation, and then you turn to the camera and go, "Oh,
We're
hello."
live. Well, hello. We didn't see you there.
Yeah.
Welcome to our house.
Yes. Welcome back to the Dragon Plus live stream. I am your host, Bart Carroll, and with me every other week, as always, is Jeremy Crawford, lead designer of the Player's Handbook and lead rules designer for Dungeons and Dragons.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back.
Good to be here as always.
How was your? Did you have any time off? You've got some travel coming up, though.
That's right. So in 2 weeks, I won't be on the show because instead I'll be at the D&D in a Castle event in England.
I legitimately have to make a note of that because I got you on the schedule.
Where I will have the joy of DMing 24 hours of D&D in a castle in northern England. Last year, we had this event in France. It was marvelous. I did a mix of regular D&D table play, but also live role play, and I plan to do the same this year. And luckily, I have almost all the same players as last year, so the story that I'm going to unleash upon them is a sort of an indirect sequel to last year's story.
So when you say 24 hours, is that added up to 24 hours? Is it 24 straight?
It's 24 hours spread over 3 days.
Okay.
So 8 hours a day.
We're
not
saying.
24 hours straight. I would fall asleep. They'd hear snoring from behind my DM screen.
Yeah.
But last year we did 8 hours each day. And it is always amazing that when you're playing D&D, how quickly those hours fly by.
I remember back in the day, a couple of years ago, we would do that for Extra Life, where it was 24, consecutive hours of live streaming, and that was madness.
That is a lot.
The players had 4-hour shifts, but the folks running the side they were tired. They were very tired.
Yeah, you're zombie showrunners.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're zombie showrunners today.
And so
Yes.
this next week, before going to the castle, I will be on vacation. We're going to travel around in Scotland, where many of my ancestors are from. And I've been to Scotland once before, but when I went before, we didn't go into the Highlands, and this time we'll be up in the Highlands.
I had a vacation maybe 3 years ago in the Scottish Highlands. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I was like, I've never seen Loch Ness. It might be silly, but I want to go up and see it. And I did, and the Highlands are fantastic.
I mean, you look at the photos, and it is just gorgeous there.
Pelham's, I was actually going to run over to the board.
Be quiet.
What's that?
Be a little bit quiet.
Oh, are we? Okay. And I was going to say, if we could mute the headphones
Sure.
when they're off over there.
We are flying this ship without Pelham. I hope we don't crash into a mountain.
How did D&D in a Castle originate last year?
So it was organized by a group of friends and also a brother and sister team, and it always was their dream to do this event, and they made it a reality last year. It was so exciting and so well received that this year it's taking place in multiple castles.
Oh, wow.
And I think they're already planning on next year. So any of you watching, if that is something you can fit into your schedule and your budget, it is hard to beat playing Dungeons and Dragons in a real live castle.
That would be nice, yes. We have our daily stand-ups here, Pelham, Greg, and myself, and we were looking at D&D in a Castle, and all of us signed. We want to go.
I recommend it.
Yes. One of those things that's hard to pull off in the continental United States.
Yes, yes. I mean, there are actually a few castles in the U.S., but there, of course, aren't, historical, actual medieval castles.
Yes.
And so, it is pretty wonderful to be in. Like this year, we'll be in an actual medieval fort for the event.
Moat and everything?
There's no moat.
Okay.
I'll see when I get there if maybe there are signs of originally there being a moat, but when you look at the photographs and look at the floor plans, I have not seen evidence of a moat. And the floor plans are important to me because just as I did last year, I am using the floor plans of the castle for my adventure.
Oh, and last year, as memory serves, you were running a Strahd adventure with an actual bat.
Yes,
made
an
its appearance.
actual bat flew into the grand ballroom where I was DMing when I uttered the words Count Strahd von Zarovich. This year, there may or may not be vampiric things in the adventure, given that it's an indirect sequel to last year's. My players have some spooky things in store for them.
I was going to say, I have to be careful what you summon. Don't put like a polar bear in your adventure.
That's right.
It just comes out from behind the curtain.
I don't think there are any polar bears in northern England, so I think we're okay.
I was disappointed that there's most likely not a monster in Loch Ness, but that was my takeaway, was once you get to Loch Ness, there is the Nessie Museum, and they go through all of the science of why it's impossible. And I thought, oh, why not play up a bit of the mystique? And they're like, well, you're already here as a tourist. We don't need to play up the mystique.
Oh, yeah. So. It's sort of like they already got you, and
yes.
now they can shatter your dream.
Right. But they're still Nessie dolls, and I still, of course, bought one. As I had to do. We've got a few questions from last time that we wanted to ask Jeremy about, but also this is a great opportunity because we have been talking through the Artificer for a couple of sessions now. If you do have any questions above and beyond the Artificer about anything to your heart's desire, please do put it in chat. Please do preface it with question. I see Crutch Crush is already getting his questions in now, and we'll do our best to grab a few of those. So while those are coming in, I will make a couple of quick announcements. Dragon Plus, the online magazine, issue 26, is available now as of yesterday for free, as always, Android, iOS, and at dragonmag.com. We do a bit of a recap of D&D Live 2019. We've got some more preview material from Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus. We showcase a bit of the Abyssal Chickens, some of the art from the story guide. We were able to pull out some of that.
Very good.
Yes.
Who doesn't like a good Abyssal Chicken?
I don't know. I can't imagine how those would taste if you actually had to eat an Abyssal Chicken.
Yeah.
I never was a fried chicken fan, though, in the first place.
Right. So, I mean, since so many other things taste like chicken, the question is, does an Abyssal Chicken taste like chicken?
I imagine it does, and it's extremely spicy. It's like a spicy chicken sandwich.
So it might be tasty.
It might be. But, yeah, it also gives you food poisoning each and every time. And can you make an Abyssal omelet? You know, there's all sorts of questions it raises.
Beware of Abyssal eggs.
Yes. I was going to ask, because I haven't asked this in a while, things that you might be reading, watching, playing outside of Dungeons and Dragons.
Let's see. We are almost done watching the show Chernobyl on HBO. I think
That's what I had written down.
you were hoping I was going to bring it up.
Yes.
So yeah, we have only one episode left. It is so well done.
I binged it. I buckled and got the HBO Go or whatever it is for the last season of Game of Thrones, and caught the ad for Chernobyl and thought, maybe. I don't know. Do I really want to see this? All the reviews were great, and I binged it. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I was a little hesitant too, and then the first episode had its hooks in me. I mean, the first episode is almost like watching a horror movie.
Right.
It's so intense.
Yes.
Highly recommend it to everybody. It of course involves a real world tragedy.
Yes.
But real world stories can also influence us as storytellers, and I actually think there are some things that occur in it that you could certainly use as inspiration for a D&D game.
I agree, and you know, again, the caveat being it is a tragedy and horrible,
Right.
But translating that into game mechanics, just the concept of radiation itself as a monster, as sort of this plague spreading monster.
Yes.
It was really scary, not just, you know, the, again, the caveat being it is a tragedy and horrible, but translating that into game mechanics, just the concept of radiation itself as a monster, as sort of this plague spreading monster. It was really scary, not just, you know, the, again, the caveat being it is a tragedy and horrible, but translating that into game mechanics, just these people have been exposed, and now they've suffered from radiation poisoning, but now they've become radioactive, and they can spread the radiation.
That invisible killer is what is so scary about it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I thought was so well done in the show is how the soundtrack always, not always, but often subtly will have sort of Geiger counter sounds in it, just when they're building dread to just remind you that even though the area might look safe, it isn't.
Yeah.
Years ago when I was in Ukraine, and I spent about a week in Kiev, I was even there in Kiev, I was paranoid about, is the radiation getting us here?
Yeah.
Miles and miles away from Chernobyl.
So I'll also make a quick pitch. There is an accompanying podcast. Peter Sagal from Wait, Don't Tell Me, which is also a great show, talks to the writer, the creator, episode by episode, as sort of kind of like a Talking Dead style. Hey, you've just seen the episode, let's talk about the creation of it. And he talks about visiting Chernobyl and how you carry film around, and there is a lifetime dose of radiation you are allowed to receive as a person because it's cumulative. And they check you going in, they check you going out, all these horrible things. I had it written down not just because I thought it was a great show and had potential game inclusion, but if memory serves again, you also had some time spent in Mother Russia back in the day?
It's true. I spent an entire summer in Russia,
Yeah.
I believe in 1992.
And out of curiosity...
It's summer. Did I misspeak and say a year?
Semester.
It was a summer. Yeah,
Okay,
I was there for a whole summer.
Yeah. And I guess how close was it then to like sort of how the show is depicting, and do they still talk about Chernobyl and all that?
So I was in Moscow for most of the summer, except again for that time when I went down to Kiev.
Yeah.
And the only time I remember Chernobyl being discussed is when we went down to Kiev, because up in Moscow we were far enough away. It wasn't as pressing of a thing, but it did come up as we went south and got closer to that region. And again, I was a little paranoid.
Sure, it's a terrifying thing. It is this invisible poison, and you don't know, like, is it here? Am I affected?
Plus I'm of the generation when I was in grade school, we had duck and cover drills for, in case we got nuked.
Yeah.
There was a lot of just general cultural fear at the time about nuclear power, about nuclear weapons. Looking back, it's sort of almost endearing that we were duck and covering under our desks. In the case of a nuclear strike.
Of course it'll save you. It's a wooden desk.
I mean, I guess the idea was if you were far enough away from the blast, being under the desk would at least maybe protect you should the building you're in collapse.
I suppose there's that. I suppose there's also some sort of psychological need to have some step that you can take for an event that's completely outside of your control.
Right.
That, I don't know what to do, I'll do this. It's not going to work, but I at least have been told there's something I can do.
So, and along those lines, where I grew up in the central coast of California, San Luis Obispo, when I was a kid, there was a nuclear power plant nearby, Diablo Canyon. And so in addition to having the duck and cover drills, because of potential nuclear war, we also had to have protocols in case the nuclear power plant melted down. Yeah. So, the Chernobyl feels very real to me because I grew up close enough to a nuclear power plant that if something had gone wrong, we would have been in trouble.
Well, in any case, it is a highly recommended show, and the podcast as well. But let's get to some of your questions. We do have a few other things to talk through and announce. Really quickly, I will say that we're going to be doing one raffle for this episode of Dragon Plus for a copy of a D&D Essentials kit. This just came into the office, so I figured I'd sacrifice mine for the raffle. So I believe that will be opened up pretty soon, if not already, by the mods. Thank you, mods. So we're going to do one raffle for a D&D Essentials kit, which does not come with the miniature of Minsk. He was involved in yesterday's Pelham's Hot Mess live stream.
Got it.
And I had to relinquish my championship belt from the week before. Are you aware of Pelham's Hot Mess?
No, I've only heard people mention it in the office. I do not know what goes on in this mess.
So it's an opportunity to kind of showcase some board game and card game play, a little bit of one-off. Last week we did a Dungeon Mayhem tournament, which I defeated Wes in at the conclusion to win the championship belt. But then yesterday, Lisa won a Baldur's Gate. Not Dungeon Mayhem, Betrayal at Baldur's Gate game, and so she won the championship belt. So congratulations to Lisa, and I missed my belt already.
Now, speaking of the Essentials kit, I was last night, doing some of my planning for D&D in the castle, and I'm planning on bringing actually some of the components from the Essentials kit with me, because the initiative cards in it are very useful, the condition cards. So I'm looking forward to, just as a DM, using some of the goodies in this kit.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now. You've got your poster map, your DM screen, character sheets, of course, dice, of course. But yeah, then there's 81 cards for magic items, sidekicks, conditions, and a whole lot more. And then there's also the adventure that you can play through as well. And the condensed rule set that you can always have as a handy-dandy reference.
Yeah, 64-page version of all of D&D's core rules.
That you worked on?
I wrote it.
So yeah. So unequivocally, yes. Again, as always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be raffling off a copy for folks that are watching live. But let's get to some of your questions. As they're coming in, again, this week, please do continue to put them in chat. But questions we have on hand. The Artificer, the Archivist, Hadnerfaln asks, the Archivist speaks about embedding knowledge in an artificial mind or real mind, yet its powers seem to only focus on the artificial mind. Where does this real mind factor in?
All right, let's look. So this is a reference to, I'm trying to remember where it is. Oh, yes. So in the opening paragraph, there is this reference to storing information in a real or an artificial mind. That, and again, kudos to the questioner for noticing this, that is a little vestigial bit of text from the previous version of the Artificer that I designed internally, where my initial version of the Artificer had a strong sort of illusionist component where they were messing with people's minds. I ended up cutting most of that out because the subclass had so much going on. I was almost turning into like, I'm designing a whole class, and it's like, this needs to just be a subclass.
Right.
But once I cut that other stuff out, I forgot about those couple of words there. So we will make sure to strike those out in the final version of the Archivist.
So Hadnerfaln wins the prize.
Yes, well done.
And again, I was going to mention, I'll save that for the end. We'll ask a couple more here. The Artificer for the Battlesmith. Ty Squell asks, could the Battlesmith have a feature that removes the melee weapon restriction on some of their smites?
There's certainly nothing in the game that would prevent us from creating such a feature, but I would actually be more likely to swap those smites out for different spells, because the Battlesmith is meant to be pretty flexible, isn't designed to rely on those smite spells. So one of the things actually on my to-do list to do in my next pass of the Battlesmith is just to double check that we are reinforcing the flexibility in the subclass and aren't channeling you too heavily toward melee or ranged weapons.
All right, and I think we've got one more here on the Artificer, and then we're going to move over to some general questions and the live questions coming in, one of which I love. Who asked that one? Wow, they're really coming in already.
It's a lot of questions coming in.
Paolo, I like your question. This is another one from Head Nafalm. The Battlesmith smells. The Battlesmith.
Talk about how subclasses smell.
Yeah. The Battlesmith spells are half smite spells. That is a great tongue twister. The Battlesmith spells are half smite spells. At least 3 of the 5 require melee weapon attacks. Do these not encourage a melee-specific playstyle? And this might follow exactly what you just said.
Yep, that's exactly what I just said.
Okay.
That is on my radar as something to vet. Because typically what we do is, if a subclass is truly meant to emphasize melee or ranged, then we go all in. But if a subclass is meant to have flexibility, then we're careful. I don't mind putting into a subclass a melee option if there are enough other options to balance it out. Mm-hmm. So that we will definitely make sure the subclass has the right balance going forward.
Cool. And I was going to mention really quickly there, one of the other announcements, Extra Life, it's going to be starting to ramp up very shortly. Emi Tanji, our wonderful creative designer, is working on shirt designs at the moment. I'm going to see about, we might test out a few in advance to see which ones make the cut. There's some great creatures from Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus that make excellent mascots for this year's Extra Life, so I'm excited to showcase those. We do have a follow-up adventure that's in the works as well that is going to make use of not 1, but 2 artificers as NPCs, as nice. Villainous NPCs. So I'm going to have to run the stats by you. So.
All right. Yeah, I'll be happy to look at the stat blocks.
Excellent. All right, let's. Here's the question that
the one that you said you loved.
Yes, and which means it's delightfully weird. Paolo Rafiz asks, can a non-flying creature, while grappling a flying creature, prone said creature to the ground? So you've got somebody grappling, say, a harpy in the air. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you knock them prone, how does that mechanically work? Are you taking them to the ground? Are they flipping around in the air and then they're still flying?
So in the flying rules, in the player's handbook, specifically in the combat section of the book, we let you know what happens with flying creatures who get knocked prone. And that is, they fall.
Okay.
They fall like a rock. And this is actually why flying can be very dangerous in D&D, unless you are hovering. Mm-hmm. So DMs know that in a number of monster stat blocks, if the monster can fly, sometimes next to its flying speed, in parentheses, will be the word hover. That means that creature, if it's knocked prone, will just bob there in the air. Beholders, for instance, have this capability. The combat rule also states that if you're being held aloft by magic, say by the fly spell, you will also bob there in the air.
Okay.
But if you rely on flapping your wings and you're not being held aloft by magic and you're not hovering and someone knocks you prone, down you go. And I have seen players use that to their advantage to awesome effect, knocking some flying creatures out of the air, not only bringing them within reach of the melee combatants in the group, but also causing falling damage to the flying creature as it tumbles down.
So, hey, there you go. Flying is a great way to get around until it doesn't work anymore.
Yes, until you get knocked prone.
Until you get knocked prone.
Which means down, down, down you go. And if you really want a long fall, if you haven't seen them, we have optional rules on falling in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which gives you guidelines on breaking up a super duper long fall. Like imagine you're up in an airship and fall, 1,000 feet, and you're like, I don't want my people to fall 1,000 feet in a split second. Xanathar's guide gives you guidelines for how to break that fall up over the course of more than one round.
All right. I'm sorry, going through some of the live questions here. I'll throw out some topics a little later on, but in the meantime, let me pull a couple that I have written down already.
There are a lot of questions in there.
There are.
Start hitting me.
There are. Ellsworth asks, can the feat polearm master be used with a spear held in one hand and a shield in the other hand?
All right, so here I am, going to D&D Beyond.
Handy dandy D&D Beyond.
To bring up Polearm Master. Autocorrect, I do not want Power Arm Master. I'm not sure what that even is.
Sounds awesome. You found one gauntlet of ogre power.
That's right. All right, so the question again is, can it be used with a spear in one hand and a shield in the other? All right, so Polearm Master says, when you take the attack action and attack with only a glaive, halberd, quarterstaff, or spear, you can use a bonus action to make a melee attack with the opposite end of the weapon. And then it gives you the specifics of that attack. The second bullet of the feat lets you know that while you're wielding a glaive, halberd, pike, quarterstaff, or spear, other creatures provoke an opportunity attack from you when they enter your reach. You'll notice nowhere in the feat does it say that having a shield, that the shield does not turn it off. Now, outside of the feat, you do need to be mindful of any restrictions the weapon might have in terms of how many hands you use, and then you're interacting with the rules on shields, but the feat itself does not prohibit shield use.
Okay. So there you go. D&D has taught me a lot about vocabulary and pronunciation. One of the words I always used to mispronounce was the word sphere, and I always thought it was pronounced spear.
Oh, interesting.
Until D&D play, and my friends were like, "What spear? No, it's sphere." I like this one as well because I misread it on initial look. Kelos asks, what are your thoughts for an artificer that gets into their construct? And I read that like, oh, it really gets into it. No.
Really, really likes that construct.
Right, like, oh, they build it out. They build it out. No. They get into their construct, sort of like a mecha or a Gundam, like a battlesmith higher level ability.
Sure. It's a cool concept. I could see exploring that potentially in its own subclass. That said, you can already achieve at least that aesthetic with the Artificer as it currently exists through the ability to create magic items. And also, imagine like there's the Enhance Armor infusion. You get to flavor that however you like. So you could flavor that this enhanced armor you're in looks like you're in a suit of power armor. Also keep in mind, a number of Artificer abilities interact in interesting ways with items that bear your item infusions. And so you could, using the tools currently in the class, flavor a number of your abilities and also that armor to essentially be this magical power suit that different magical effects are channeling through.
My wheels are spinning. I think it would be great to do an article series in Dragon Plus where we kind of go through. There is a lot of opportunity in the flavor of the Artificer, whether with the Homunculus or with the Iron Defender or items created to kind of showcase this is what this Artificer has created or has done, and solicit concepts and inspirations from folks as well, and kind of list it out for everyone to see where they might have taken their Artificer. So yes, get into your construct.
Well,
into it.
So it's interesting that when it comes to this idea of having a suit of armor that you get into and that is sort of a power suit in some way, we actually explored a similar concept when we were working on Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. And initially, we thought about making an Izzet-themed subclass or set of options where essentially those options were all based on a suit of armor. And we even previewed something along those lines in Unearthed Arcana. What we discovered, though, looking at the playtest feedback and also pondering different ways to realize that it was better for us to express the power armor as a magic item and not limit it to a particular subclass. So I would much rather actually give artificers the ability of any sort to access these, a sort of power suit-like suit of armor rather than locking it down to a particular subclass.
Okay. Oh, and hey, speaking of Extra Life, we explored the Barrier Peaks power armor as
That's
well.
right.
So,
yep. Last year on this very show,
as a magic
we
item.
talked about the power armor and Expedition to Barrier Peaks as a magic item. Because honestly, anyone could climb in. That happens in a lot of, especially a lot of anime with power armor. There's always like the chosen one who finds the power armor and he or she climbs in and has an intuitive grasp of it and away they go.
That is the children's book I just read last night. It was Mr. Men Go to the Moon. And some of them couldn't go to the moon because they couldn't physically fit into the astronaut suit.
Interesting.
But in D&D, no. It's it changes here.
Well, and actually this idea of people getting into some kind of machine, whether it's power armor or some other kind of mecha, is also fresh in my mind because the other night we watched, for the first time, an episode of the Netflix series Voltron. And I was a big fan of Voltron as a kid, and it was fun to watch this remake.
What did you think? I haven't seen it yet.
I liked it enough to watch at least a few more episodes, and after I have a few episodes under my belt, I'll see what I think of the series overall.
This is my pitch. There's so much good content that I don't have time to either to survey it all or really to kind of see a lot of the series through to the end. I need some sort of here's the best 3 episodes of 10 great series. I need a curated piece of a channel on Netflix.
Or what we need to do is next time we take our vacations, tell everyone I'm going to Scotland, but so that no one will contact me, but actually stay home and just binge watch shows for a week.
The staycation has got great potential. I do that every vacation. I'm going to go off on my mancation by myself. I'm going to write. I'm going to sequester myself in a hotel room. And I always just immediately get up and just start walking around the city and sightsee. I never do it.
Yeah.
But here's a Mephisto Faust. Good from Poe.
It's a devilish screen name.
Yes, it is. For the sake of the alchemist. This sounds like an HR question. How many hours are in a workday for making potions of healing?
So,
what's the definition of a D&D workday?
Well, what's funny is we actually define it in Xanathar's Guide. So the crafting rules in Xanathar's Guide are divided up by workdays, and if I remember correctly, we say it's 8 hours of work per day. So there you go. For more on that, go to Xanathar's Guide for all your crafting needs.
I like the idea that there's some wizard that's going to plane shift to a world that has a shorter day. It spins faster, so you can make more.
Yes, so you can get things done faster.
Just come back.
Wait, I want to go to this world where I can get things done faster.
Well, the good news and bad news. It's Venus, so it spins really fast, but it's 8,000 degrees. So I'm sure my astronomy is completely wrong.
Here, I'm jumping to the crafting and item rules here on D&D Beyond to see where we went bonkazonks. Oh no, where we talk about work weeks. That's right. And how long it takes you to work. In real life, let's have like a 30-hour work week.
I think it was a Twilight Zone episode, or along the vein of that, where there was a guy who had a magic stopwatch, more or less, that could stop
Yes,
time.
I remember it.
And he took great advantage of it. And at the end of the episode, the missiles were about to hit, so he had to stop time and just leave it that way. up until that nightmarish end to the story, a stopwatch, you could just stop time.
Yeah.
And somehow your electronics would still function so that you could binge watch shows, or I don't know how it would all work, but man alive, that would be a fantastic one.
So I did just confirm that in Xanathar's guide, we talk about work weeks, 5 days of work, and on each of those days you must work for 8 hours.
All right. I like that even in the world of D&D, it sort of parallels the current work week.
Yeah. Which is actually, especially compared to the real world Middle Ages, no, actually not the Middle Ages, actually during the period of the Industrial Revolution, people worked grueling hours. I had to correct myself because actually in the Middle Ages it's thought that even peasants had better work schedules than we have now.
Really?
Yeah. I read recently that medieval peasants in Europe had basically more days off a year than the typical American has.
Well, that's not saying a whole lot, but...
Yeah, I know. The typical American with 2 weeks off, it's like you can only go up pretty much.
But I guess I imagine once the drudgery of agricultural life and crafting might leave you with some extra time on your hands.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But in the industrial era, it was a little bit more grueling.
Oh yeah, with the Industrial Revolution, and that's when people were worked to death. Sometimes literally worked to death when they discovered factories and how much could be produced in a short amount of time.
Right. Biorobots from Chernobyl.
That's right. But we don't want to spoil it, even though it's history.
No, I know I'm harping on that show. It's a great scene, and the aesthetics of it match apparently the real world footage. So.
Oh yes, yeah.
Jumping back to a question here we had before, not Halfwing asks, in the Sage Advice Compendium, it is said that fundamentally a monk weapon counts as such, no matter how a monk uses it. In the case of an improvised weapon attack, such as throwing a rapier, which of these rules is the specific rule that beats the general rule? Improvised weapon damage or martial arts weapon damage? So what trumps what if you're a monk? Boy, if you're trying to bend, mutilate, and break the rules, if you're a monk using an improvised weapon, does that improvised weapon become a monk weapon, or is it still an improvised weapon?
So I am guessing that the monk this person has in mind is probably a kensei, because if the person who's asking the question thinks a rapier is a monk weapon, that would only be true for a kensei.
Okay.
Now, the improvised weapon rule basically tells us how to answer this question.
Okay.
Because the rule is that when you use a weapon improvised, the default is it doesn't really function as that weapon. Essentially, all of that weapon's properties, its entire identity basically vanishes when you use it as an improvised weapon. It suddenly becomes just basically a nondescript object that does the amount of damage that is given in the improvised weapon rule. Now, your DM has the option of saying a particular improvised weapon functions as a bona fide weapon, meaning one of the weapons on the weapon table in the player's handbook. If the DM makes that decision, then, like if let's say the DM says, I'm going to allow that that protrusion you just pulled off that fence and through, I'm going to let it count as a dagger. And if a dagger for you qualifies for some other special rule, then suddenly that piece of the fence you just threw gets to benefit from those other rules that you have.
Okay.
But if the DM does not say that, the piece of the fence doesn't qualify for any of your special rules because it does not count as any of the weapons on the weapon tables.
So it's an improvised weapon unless the DM is classifying it as still a weapon. In which case, then it functions for the monk accordingly.
Well, depending on what it is.
Right.
Yeah. Because not every weapon counts as a monk weapon for a monk. So it all comes down to whether the DM says this improvised thing if it counts as a weapon that is a monk weapon for that monk. but the default is super simple. The default is improvised weapons don't count as anything on the weapon table and therefore don't qualify for any special feature that requires one of those weapons.
Here's my new show pitch. It's going to be called D&D Mythbusters. Only apropos of this, we were watching Conan, not the Barbarian, we were watching Conan the Destroyer, in which he takes his sword and chucks it through a mirror and impales the wizard on the other end of the mirror. I can't possibly imagine how that would function if somebody could actually throw a sword unerringly through a mirror and still have it stab somebody. So in the case like this, I'd like to see
that's a really good die roll.
I would like to see some of those movie feats, and the very cinematic moments, which we like to recreate in our games. I'd like to see if anyone could actually recreate those in the physics of the real world. I'm guessing no, but it makes for a good story and a good moment otherwise.
But again, thankfully, all those crazy things are possible in D&D.
Yes,
because of the swinginess of the D20.
You could hit a 20.
Yeah, exactly. So you could have it shatter the mirror and go through and impale Thulsa Doom or whoever it is standing on the other side. I guess Conan and the Destroyer would not have been Thulsa Doom.
No, he was out. It was Andre the Giant in a very bad rubber suit at the very end of the movie.
I'd forgotten about that because I haven't seen that movie since it came out.
It's terrible. Dan Tovar, who works with us, actually thinks it stands up. It does not.
Oh boy! Now I want to rewatch it. Is that the one that Grace Jones is in?
Yes. Yeah, and Wilt Chamberlain.
Oh my gosh!
Which is kind of cool. They make up this cool D&D party, but the movie itself, it is just not on the level of. I have a feeling, and this happens in movie franchises. You've got Conan the Barbarian, hard R, great movie, and they said, well, this has some franchise legs to it, but now we have to broaden it a little bit, make it a little bit more friendly so we can have a wider audience. Let's make it PG instead, and it just sort of detracts from the movie, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, again, it's been too long. I can't remember.
It might be best not to see it ever again, and just retain the memory of them.
Right.
That's how I am with Hawk the Slayer and some other fine fantasy films that I remember. Kroll, all these.
Oh, yes. I made the mistake of rewatching Kroll. I had fond memories of it as a kid, and then I rewatched it like, oh, I wish I had not. So, real quick, one other thing about improvised weapons, everyone.
I'm trying desperately to pull you off topic. It's not working.
No, I enjoy it because we gotta think about movies of old, many of which are not as good as we remember them. Keep in mind, DMs, you are under no obligation to make improvised weapons complicated. The baseline rule, it is fine to just go with the baseline, which is they never count as one of the weapons on the weapon tables. And if essentially you have someone at your table who is like, well, now can I make this table leg count as this weapon? And can I make this glass of wine count as this other weapon? If you enjoy it, as I so often love to say, follow your bliss and go for it. But if instead at your table your response internally or externally is ain't nobody got time for that, then just go with the simple rule. Doesn't count, and move on and follow your bliss. Either way, whatever is more fun for your group.
As I've said in the past, and I'll say it again, we do keep a record of all your questions, so if we don't get to it this week, it's not for naught. We will record it and look to get back to it. That said, I'm going to throw out maybe 3 questions. You can take your pick.
Ooh.
Yes.
I'll have to see if I want to pick the hard one or the easy one or the one in between.
Advice for homebrewing spells Or what happens if an astral dreadnought eats an astral dreadnought has a demiplane in its belly. The astral sea has color pools. What happens if a dreadnought attempts to eat one? Or can a spellcaster cast...
The dreadnought would go through the color pool. All right, I answered that quick. Next one.
Or can a spellcaster cast a spell and counter a spell in the same turn?
Oh, this is a good one. This one comes up every now and again. There is no rule that says you can't cast, let's say, a one-action spell and a reaction spell in the same round. You can do it. What again throws people is there is a rule about bonus action spells. That rule only kicks in if you cast on your turn a spell that has a casting time of one bonus action. Any other spell you cast, like action, reaction, if there are no bonus action spells in the mix, you're good to go. But as soon as you cast a one bonus action spell, then that rule kicks in, and then the rule is the only other spell you can cast on your turn is a one action spell that is a cantrip.
So here's the example that None Good Left asks. For example, a wizard casts a spell. Another caster counters that spell. Can the first caster counter the counter spell and still have the original spell go through?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
And in fact, this is a question I answer in the Sage Advice Compendium. If you go to my Twitter page, which is at Jeremy E. Crawford, which is also right there on your screen, you will find a link on my Twitter page to the Sage Advice Compendium, which is a PDF of rules questions that come up often and our answers to those questions.
Follow-up. So the Astral Dreadnought wouldn't have the bag of holding portable hole kablooey effect going on?
No, no. The bag of holding has that kablooey property, and it is built into the item. In our exceptions-based game, basically things contain their rules inside them unless there is a general rule that applies to the situation. And so in this case, there is no general rule that applies, and so right into that color, the colorful portal the Astral Dreadnought will go, unless, of course, the DM decides the DM wants some shenanigans and has the Astral Dreadnought actually, engulf the portal, and then can improvise what happens.
I'm just delighted there's an Astral Dreadnought in somebody's game.
I love Astral Dreadnoughts, but part of that is because they appear on the cover of the original Manual of the Planes.
Yes, and it was a kick-ass cover. It was an awesome monster. Out of curiosity, have you ever had a player, or as a player, attempt to place an extra-dimensional portal into another extra-dimensional portal? By intent or by accident?
Yes, but it's been a long, long time. That's why I paused, because I was like, oh, I'm like rifling through my mental files of all the many, many, many D&D games I've run. Yes, but it's been a while since that's happened.
That was, Sean Wood was on the live stream last week, and he wanted to pitch that, where it was just sort of a DM chat session of sort of behind the screen. And here's incidents that happened in folks' games over time and how they handled it, and anecdotes and challenges and interests of that. So, let's see. If you use two-weapon fighting, dual wielding, does extra? Boy, we get into the nitty-gritty.
Oh, I think we answered this one last time.
Did we?
Yeah, this was
Right.
about can you use both two-weapon fighting and extra attack, and the answer is yes.
Then forget it. Let's ask Vistinus's any opportunity to have a flavor mechanic for magic all around for all classes. I'm really hitting the emphasis on that in a weird way. Any opportunity to have a flavor mechanic for magic all around for all classes to make a setting style like Artificer with magic.
So I think what the question is getting at is...
I've confused myself asking that because I have no idea where the...
So the question is basically pointing at the fact that artificers cast spells like many of our other classes do, but they have a special way of flavoring it. They channel their spells through tools.
Yes.
We could certainly come up with an alternative rule for our other spellcasting classes that flavor their spellcasting in various ways. Here's the thing. We actually already do that in the Player's Handbook. We give you the ability to flavor your spellcasting quite a bit depending on the type of spellcasting focus your spellcaster uses. And so each of the spellcasting classes has a variety of spellcasting focuses available to it, although there are a few that simply use the component pouch. And what you use and how you describe your character using it can really affect what your character's spellcasting looks like and sounds like, maybe even smells like in the D&D world.
Well, you've answered the question and explained the question to me, so well done all around.
I have read untold numbers of questions and comments from all of you wonderful people over the years. So I'm used to deciphering what is the person getting at, what is it. What is their heart's desire for this thing in the game?
It's like getting a text sometimes. Like, what's the actual? Where are the commas supposed to go here? Mm-hmm. Where's the emphasis supposed to go? What is the actual tone? I can't figure out if this is being satiric or actually angry. We are getting close to the top of the hour, so we've got time for a few questions left. I'll throw out another sample that you can choose to or not. But before we do head off, I did want to mention that we'll be back next week. I believe we're going to be doing a Dungeons and Doodles. We haven't done that in a long time, but we've got a couple of folks internally from Magic, and then we're going to be doing another one in a couple of weeks. Hopefully we're going to be able to schedule Stan to join us for that one. So please do tune in 2 weeks. We apparently will not have Jeremy Crawford as he is off in a castle.
I'll be DMing.
But congratulations to our raffle winner for the Essentials kit. Last week, the raffle prizes were some swag from D&D Live, and then whatever I could take from the free table. Because there's always random stuff.
Yes.
Nothing perishable, nothing dangerous. But for our raffle winners last week, I hope what you receive in the mail is at least to your liking as far as the spirit of what that raffle was.
For those of you watching, I'm laughing because the free table here so often ends up being like a pile of old VHS tapes, half of which have like Patrick Swayze on the cover.
Like, I know this is one man's treasure is another man's junk is another treasure and all that, but like sometimes no, it's just junk. Like you can throw some things away. So please bear that in mind as those packages come into you. We've got a question about making Keog Tum's ointment with a herbalist kit. The funniest misunderstanding one of your players had around a game, or will there be more items to make with the herbalist kit alchemist supplies, such as the Thunderstone, in the future? Any of those strike your fancy?
Let's see. We can. How about we do both of the item ones?
Okay.
So we'll see if there are more items to make. Yeah, I'll think about that.
The wheels are spinning.
I'm rifling through my mind on future products. So, yeah, maybe. That's a maybe. Sorry, I can't be more specific. The artificer, of course, gives many opportunities to flavor the creation of this or that, depending on how you decide to describe your spell casting, your item infusions, and whatnot. So if a person is really, really wanting a crafty maker of things, I strongly recommend giving the artificer a go.
Oh, and as a quick aside, as far as questions that do come in, questions about future products and the like, I dodge those.
Yes. We don't talk about them.
We don't. We'll save those for Nathan and spoilers and swag. So yes, but as far as game rules, game material, game ideas, and intentions, yes, please do ask that. But there's always a few that ask about actual or potential products that I shamelessly choose to run away from.
And what was that other question about the ointment?
Mephisto Faust again asks, can you pronounce Kiog Tum's ointment? Can you make Kiog Tum's ointment with an herbalist kit?
There's no rule that says that you can, but there's also no rule that says you can't. Using the Xanathar's Guide item creation rules, a DM could certainly say that the herbalism kit could be used as a part of the creation process. But there is nothing built into the herbalism kit on its own that would allow you to make this magic item.
It feels like a great case for the artificer alchemist, though, to have their hand in some sort of creation like that. The door creaks open as a wild Pelham returns, which means we must be getting close to 2 o'clock.
And the light comes back.
Yeah, every week though, no one's here to turn our light off, the light back on.
As we just talked to a dark room.
I know. Yes, as far as I know, we're actually here. This all just isn't in my mind. You're sitting next to me, and there are people watching.
I am just in your mind. But
well, then I spent a delightful hour with myself. And hopefully everyone else did. We'll be back next week with another Dungeons and Doodles. Please stay tuned for Heroes of the Veil. As always, thanks to everyone for tuning in, and congratulations to our raffle winner. Thanks to our followers, subscribers. Thank you to our moderators, as always. Lisa Chan will be coming for that championship belt before you know it. Next week, Pelham's Hot Mess. Pelham, can we spoil what you're going to be playing next week in Pelham?
Dungeon.
We'll be playing Dungeon!
Classic.
Exclamation. I love that board game. I've played that board game before I was playing D&D for reals, and we play it at home with Quinn. We house rule the hell out of it to make it even more easier for a 5-year-old, but that's a fun one.
fabulous.
So tune in for that. All right, 2 o'clock on the nose. Thank you, Mr. Crawford, and do have fun, as jealous as we are of European castles.
Oh, thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Yes. End screen. End.